The family meeting took place in a location Janet would never have found on her own, a private room beneath a legitimate Italian restaurant in Little Italy. The entrance was through the kitchen, down a narrow staircase that smelled of aged wine and secrets, into a space that looked like it had been carved out of the earth itself. The room was larger than Janet expected, with exposed brick walls, a massive round table that could seat 20, and lighting that created more shadows than illumination. Maps covered one wall. Another held what looked like a family tree, with photographs and names connected by lines that showed relationships and hierarchies. People were already arriving when Stanley, Janet, and Walter descended the stairs. Janet recognized Jose immediately. He stood by the bar, pouring himself a generous whiskey, his expression darker than she'd ever seen it. Other faces were familiar from the Il Silencio dinner, but many were new. And then there was Marie. Marie DeLuca swept into the room like a queen entering her throne room. She was perhaps 50, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a severe chignon, wearing a black power suit that screamed authority. Her face was all sharp angles and calculating intelligence, and when her eyes landed on Janet, they went cold with assessment. "So this is the famous Janet Morrison." Marie's voice was cultured, precise. "The girl who has Stanley so distracted he's making mistakes." Stanley's hand touched Janet's lower back, a warning and a reassurance simultaneously. "Marie, Janet is here because I trust her. That's all the explanation you need." "Is it?" Marie moved closer, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. "A month ago, you would never have brought an outsider to a family meeting. Now here she stands, witness to our most sensitive business. Either you've lost your mind, or she's something more than an assistant." "She's both," Lorraine said, entering behind them with her own glass of wine. "And she's under Stanley's protection, which means she's under our protection. Or did you forget how this works, Marie?" The two women stared at each other with barely concealed hostility. Janet understood there was history here, complicated, probably painful history. "Ladies," Stanley said quietly, but with authority that cut through the tension, "we have more important problems than territorial disputes. Sit down, all of you." The room gradually filled, 20 people, maybe more, all taking seats around the massive table. Jose sat at Stanley's right hand. Lorraine took the left. Marie, after a long moment, sat across from Janet, with her eyes never leaving her face. Walter and 3 other security guards positioned themselves at the doors. When everyone was seated, Stanley stood. The room fell immediately silent. 2 hours ago, the Ramos cartel hit our distribution warehouse on the docks. They killed 3 of our people, Tony Esposito, Marcus Chen, and Danny Rizzo. They took 2 shipments worth approximately $1.2 million. Stanley's voice was flat, controlled, but Janet could hear the fury underneath. This wasn't random. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned by someone who knew our schedules, our security protocols, and our inventory. Murmurs rippled around the table. "What are you saying?" one of the older men asked, someone Janet didn't recognize. "I'm saying we have a traitor." Stanley let the words hang. "Someone in this organization, someone with access to sensitive information, sold us out to the Ramos cartel." The room exploded into voices, denials, accusations, demands for evidence. Stanley waited, letting the initial reaction burn itself out, before raising his hand for silence. "Jose, tell them what you found." Jose stood, his expression grim.
The warehouse security system was disabled from the inside. Someone with the admin password shut down the cameras and alarms 15 minutes before the hit. That password is only known to 5 people: Stanley, me, Walter, Marie, and Lorraine. All eyes turned to the 4 people Jose had named. "Are you accusing us?" Marie's voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm stating facts," Jose replied. "The password was used. One of us gave it to someone else, or one of us is the traitor." "Ridiculous," Marie snapped. "I've been with this family for 18 years. I've bled for this organization. The suggestion that I would—" "No one is above suspicion," Stanley interrupted. "Not even me. Until we know who betrayed us, everyone is a potential threat." Lorraine leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine thoughtfully. "The Ramos cartel has been trying to expand into New York for 2 years. We've blocked them at every turn. This feels like more than just stealing money, Stanley. This feels like a declaration of war." "It is," Stanley agreed, "but they couldn't wage war without inside help. Someone opened the door for them." "Then we find who and make an example," Jose said coldly. "Old school, public, so everyone knows what happens to traitors." Several people around the table nodded agreement, but Janet felt sick. She knew what old school meant: torture, public execution, a warning written in blood. "We'll do what's necessary," Stanley said, "but first we need information. Jose, I want deep background checks on everyone who has access to that warehouse, and I mean everyone. Our people, the cleaning crew, the delivery drivers, everyone." "Already started." "Good. Lorraine, reach out to your contacts in Mexico. I want to know everything about the Ramos cartel's operations, who's running them, what they want, and where they're vulnerable." Lorraine nodded. "Marie, you're going to audit our finances, every account, every transaction, going back 6 months. If someone's taking money, I want to know." Marie's expression was stony. "Of course." Stanley's gaze swept the room. "The rest of you, double security on all our operations. No one moves product without at least 3 escorts. No one makes deals without clearing them through Jose or me. And if anyone sees anything suspicious, anything at all, you report it immediately. Understood?" A chorus of agreement. "One more thing," Stanley's voice went deadly quiet. "The people we lost today, Tony, Marcus, Danny, they had families. I want their wives and children taken care of, college funds, mortgages paid off, whatever they need. We look after our own, even in death." The respect in the room was palpable. This was why people followed Stanley Marchetti. He was ruthless when necessary, but he took care of his people, always. The meeting continued for another hour, with various reports on business operations, territory disputes, and financial matters. Janet took notes, trying to keep track of the complex web of relationships and transactions, but she was acutely aware of Marie's eyes on her the entire time, assessing, judging, looking for weakness. Finally, Stanley called the meeting to a close. People stood, conversations breaking into smaller groups. Jose pulled Stanley aside for a private discussion. Lorraine disappeared upstairs, probably to make the call Stanley had requested, which left Janet alone with Marie DeLuca. "Walk with me," Marie said. It wasn't a request. They moved to a quieter corner of the room, away from the others. Marie studied Janet with eyes that missed nothing. "You're wondering why I don't trust you," Marie said finally. "I assume you don't trust anyone easily." "Smart girl." Marie's smile was thin. "But you're right. I don't trust easily, because I've seen what happens when Stanley lets his guard down, when he lets emotions cloud his judgment. I'm just his assistant." "Are you?" Marie moved closer, her voice dropping. I've known Stanley since he was 23 years old. I was there when he fought his way up from nothing. I've seen him with dozens of women, beautiful women, smart women, dangerous women, and I've never, not once, seen him look at any of them the way he looks at you." Janet's heart was pounding. "You're imagining things. I'm seeing clearly, which is more than you are doing." Marie's expression was almost pitiful. "You think you can survive in this world? You think you're strong enough for what's coming? Because when Stanley falls, and he will fall, everyone does eventually, you'll fall with him, and that fall will destroy you." "Then why are you warning me?" Janet asked. "If you don't trust me, if you think I'm a liability, why not just tell Stanley to fire me?" Marie's laugh was bitter. "Because it wouldn't matter. He's already too deep. Telling him to let you go would only make him hold on tighter. Men like Stanley are contrary that way. Tell them something is dangerous, and they'll walk straight into the fire just to prove they can survive it." "So what do you want from me?" Marie's eyes bored into hers. "I want you to be honest with yourself about what you are to him. You're not just an assistant, Janet. You're not even just a woman he desires. You're—"
The call came at 4:17 a.m. Janet jolted awake to the buzzing of her secure phone, her heart already racing before she was fully conscious. Stanley's name flashed on the screen. "Hello?" Her voice was rough with sleep. "We found him." Stanley's voice was cold, empty of emotion. "The traitor. Jose tracked him down an hour ago." Janet sat up, fully awake now. "Who is it?" "Michael Romano, one of the men from the Il Silencio dinner. He's been on our payroll for 8 years. There was a pause, and Janet heard background noise, voices, movement, the sound of something heavy being dragged. "I need you to come to the warehouse, the one on Pier 47. "Now? Stanley, it's 4 in the morning. "I know what time it is. I also know that you need to see this. You need to understand what this life really means." His voice softened slightly. "Walter's already on his way to get you. Be ready in 15 minutes. He hung up before she could argue. Janet dressed quickly in jeans and a sweater, her hands trembling. She knew what she was being called to witness. Justice, retribution, whatever euphemism made it easier to stomach. It all meant the same thing. Someone was gonna die tonight. Walter arrived exactly 15 minutes later, his expression grim as he escorted her to the car. The drive to Pier 47 was silent, except for the sound of tires on wet pavement. It had started raining sometime after midnight. The warehouse was isolated, surrounded by shipping containers and abandoned equipment. Light spilled from the open bay doors, and Janet could see figures moving inside. Her stomach clenched with dread. Walter led her inside, and the scene that greeted her would be burned into her memory forever. Michael Romano sat tied to a chair in the center of an empty space, blood streaming from his nose and a split lip. His expensive suit was torn and dirty, and one eye was already swelling shut. Around him stood Jose, 3 other men Janet didn't recognize, and Stanley. Stanley had removed his jacket. His white shirt was rolled up to his elbows, and there was blood on his knuckles. His face was a mask of cold fury, the transformation Janet had witnessed at the museum, but amplified tenfold. When he saw her, something flickered in his eyes, regret, maybe, or shame. "Janet," he crossed to her, taking her arm and pulling her slightly away from the others. "You don't have to stay for this." "Then why did you ask me to come?" "Because I need you to see who I really am, what I'm capable of. Before this," he gestured between us, "goes any further, you need to know the truth." Janet looked past him at Romano, who was watching them with desperate, pleading eyes. "What did he do?" "He sold us out to the Ramos cartel, gave us our schedules, our security codes, everything. 3 good men are dead because of him." Stanley's voice was flat. Factual. He did it for money. $200,000 and a promise of protection when the cartel moved in. How do you know? Because Jose found the money and because Romano confessed. Stanley's expression was unreadable. He thought if he told us everything, we might let him live. Will you? Stanley's laugh was bitter. No, there's only one punishment for betrayal in our world. It has to be absolute, or others will think they can do the same. Janet looked at Romano again. He was crying now, pleading in Italian, his words tumbling over each other in desperation. He was maybe 40, with a wife and children. Jose had mentioned that at the Il Silencio dinner. His family, Janet said quietly. What happens to them? Stanley's expression softened slightly. They'll be taken care of. His wife and kids didn't choose this. They'll get enough money to disappear, start over somewhere far from New York. They'll be told he died in an accident. That's merciful. I'm not a monster, Janet. I just do monstrous things when necessary. Stanley touched her face gently. Last chance. You can leave now. Walter will take you home and we'll never speak of this again. Janet met his eyes. She saw the darkness there, the capacity for violence, but she also saw the man who made sure traitors' families were protected, the man who mourned his fallen soldiers and paid for their children's education, the man who looked at her like she was the only light in his shadowed world. I'm staying, she said firmly. Something like pride flickered across Stanley's face. Then stay close to me, and no matter what you see, remember that this is justice in our world. It's ugly, but it's necessary. He led her back to the others. Jose raised an eyebrow at her presence, but said nothing. Stanley approached Romano, crouching down so they were eye level. You know why you're here, Michael. Please, Romano sobbed. Please, Stanley, I have kids. I made a mistake. I'll pay back the money. I'll do anything. You killed 3 of our brothers. Stanley's voice was ice. You brought an enemy into our territory. You broke the most sacred rule of our family. He stood slowly. There's no coming back from that. Stanley, please. Stanley looked at Jose and nodded once. Jose pulled out a gun, black, utilitarian, deadly. He chambered around with practiced efficiency. Janet's breath caught. She wanted to look away, but Stanley's words echoed in her head. You need to see who I really am. So she watched. Any last words? Stanley asked, his voice almost gentle now. Romano's face crumpled. Please, tell my wife. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell my kids I loved them. I will, and I'll make sure they're safe. I have your word. Romano nodded, tears streaming down his face. He closed his eyes. Jose raised the gun. The shot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space. Janet flinched, her ears ringing. Romano's body jerked once, then went still, slumping forward against his restraints. Silence fell. Stanley stared at the body for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to his men. Clean this up. I want him found in his car by the docks. Suicide, gunshot wound. Make it believable. They moved immediately, efficient and professional. Janet realized this wasn't the first time they'd done this, probably not even the 100th. Stanley took her arm and led her outside into the rain. She was shaken, shock setting in. He pulled off his jacket and draped it around her shoulders, despite the blood on his hands. I'm sorry you had to see that, he said quietly. Are you? Or was that the point? To show me what you're capable of, to scare me away? Stanley's jaw tightened. Maybe. Part of me hoped you'd run, that you'd be smart enough to get out before you're in too deep. And the other part? He turned to face her fully, and in the dim light from the warehouse, his eyes were tortured. The other part hoped you'd stay anyway, that you'd see all the darkness in me and decide I was worth it.
Janet looked at him. This man who just ordered an execution without hesitation. This man who controlled an empire built on violence and fear. This man who looked at her like she was the only light in his shadowed world. "I'm staying," she said firmly. Something like pride flickered across Stanley's face. "Then stay close to me, and no matter what you see, remember that this is justice in our world. It's ugly, but it's necessary." He led her back to the others. Jose raised an eyebrow at her presence, but said nothing. Stanley approached Romano, crouching down so they were eye level. "You know why you're here, Michael." "Please," Romano sobbed. "Please, Stanley, I have kids. I made a mistake. I'll pay back the money. I'll do anything." "You killed 3 of our brothers." Stanley's voice was ice. "You brought an enemy into our territory. You broke the most sacred rule of our family." He stood slowly. "There's no coming back from that." "Stanley, please!" Stanley looked at Jose and nodded once. Jose pulled out a gun, black, utilitarian, deadly. He chambered around with practiced efficiency. Janet's breath caught. She wanted to look away, but Stanley's words echoed in her head. "You need to see who I really am." So she watched. "Any last words?" Stanley asked, his voice almost gentle now. Romano's face crumpled. "Please, tell my wife. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell my kids I loved them." "I will, and I'll make sure they're safe. I have your word." Romano nodded, tears streaming down his face. He closed his eyes. Jose raised the gun. The shot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space. Janet flinched, her ears ringing. Romano's body jerked once, then went still, slumping forward against his restraints. Silence fell. Stanley stared at the body for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to his men. "Clean this up. I want him found in his car by the docks. Suicide, gunshot wound. Make it believable." They moved immediately, efficient.
I'm saying I want you. I'm saying that watching you tonight, seeing how you handled Romano, how you comforted me, how you carried the weight of all those decisions, I've never wanted anyone more. Her voice dropped. I'm saying, take me to bed, Stanley Marchetti. Show me what it means to be yours. Stanley stared at her for a long moment, searching her face. Whatever he saw there must have convinced him, because he swept her up in his arms and carried her toward the bedroom. Last chance, he murmured against her lips. Once we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine completely. I'm already yours, Janet whispered back. I have been since the moment you caught my wrist in that museum. Stanley's answering smile was fierce and possessive as he kicked the bedroom door closed behind them. The morning sun woke Janet slowly. She was warm, comfortable, wrapped in expensive sheets and the scent of Stanley's cologne. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then memory returned in a rush. The warehouse, Romano, the drive here, and then... She turned her head to find Stanley propped on one elbow, watching her with an expression that was equal parts tender and territorial. How long have you been awake? She asked, her voice still rough from sleep. An hour, maybe 2. I couldn't stop watching you. He traced a finger along her jawline. You're beautiful when you sleep, peaceful, like the world hasn't touched you yet. The world has definitely touched me. Janet caught his hand and pressed a kiss to his palm. You've touched me. Stanley's eyes darkened. Regrets? None. She meant it. Despite everything, the violence, the danger, the moral complexity, she had no regrets about last night. You? My only regret is that I can't keep you in this bed forever, away from everything that wants to hurt us. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. But the world doesn't stop just because I've found something worth protecting more than my empire. Reality crashed back in. What happens now? Stanley sat up, and Janet admired the play of muscles across his back, the scars that told stories she'd probably never hear.
Now we deal with the Ramos cartel. Romano's death sends a message that we know about the betrayal and we dealt with it, but they'll retaliate. They always do. How? That's what we need to figure out. He reached for his phone on the nightstand and scrolled through messages. His expression darkened. Jose has been busy. He found out the Ramos cartel is planning something big, an attack on one of our legitimate businesses to make a public statement. Janet's blood ran cold. Which business? Stanley's jaw tightened. Lorraine's boutique. They're going to hit it this afternoon when it's full of customers. Maximum casualties, maximum impact. We have to warn her. Already done. Lorraine's closing the shop and moving to a safe house. Stanley stood and started dressing, his movements efficient. But this changes things. They're not just coming after our illegal operations. They're willing to kill civilians to make a point. What are you going to do? Stanley turned to look at her, and she saw the crime boss back in full force, cold, calculating, ready for war. I'm going to end this, today, before anyone else dies. Janet climbed out of bed and started gathering her clothes. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You're staying here where it's safe. No. Janet's voice was firm as she pulled on her jeans. Well, you said last night made me yours. Well, that goes both ways, Stanley. Where you go, I go. We're in this together. They stared at each other, wills clashing. Finally, his expression softened slightly. You're going to be the death of me, Janet Morrison. Or the life of you. She crossed to him and wrapped her arms around his waist. Either way, we find out together. Stanley held her close for a moment, his chin resting on top of her head. If anything happens to you. Nothing will happen to me. You'll make sure of that. Janet pulled back to look at him. Because you're very good at keeping your people safe, remember? Most of the time, not always. Most of the time is good enough for me. Stanley kissed her forehead. Get dressed. We have a war to win.
6 months later. Janet stood on the balcony of Stanley's penthouse, their penthouse now, watching the sun set over Manhattan. The city glittered in the dying light, beautiful and dangerous and endlessly fascinating. So much had changed in 6 months. The Ramos cartel had been completely dismantled, their operations absorbed or destroyed. The NYPD had investigated, of course, but mysteriously all evidence pointed to an internal cartel conflict. No charges were filed against Stanley or his organization. Janet had moved into the penthouse 3 months ago, though she still kept her old apartment for her mother's sake. Josephine Morrison was doing well at her new care facility, the best in the state, paid for by Stanley's seemingly endless resources. She didn't know the details of Janet's new life, and that was probably for the best. You're thinking too loud again. Stanley's voice came from behind her. Janet smiled as his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. Just reflecting. It's been quite a year. Understatement. He pressed a kiss to her neck. This time last year, you were drowning in debt and desperation. Now you're living in a penthouse and dating a crime boss. Quite the career trajectory. Is that what we're calling it? Dating? Stanley turned her to face him, his expression serious. What would you call it? Janet looked at this man who'd changed everything, who'd saved her and corrupted her and loved her with a fierceness that still took her breath away, who still sometimes woke up from nightmares about the people he'd killed, who checked on her mother every week without being asked, who was both the most dangerous and the safest person she knew. Love, she said simply. I'd call it love. Stanley's smile was brilliant. Good answer. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Janet's heart stopped. Stanley, before you panic, it's not what you think. Well, not yet. He opened the box to reveal a stunning necklace, a delicate platinum chain with a diamond pendant in the shape of a key.
This is a promise. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll ask the real question. But for now, I just want you to know that you hold the key to everything I am." Tears pricked Janet's eyes as Stanley fastened the necklace around her throat. "It's beautiful." "You're beautiful and brave and far too good for someone like me, but I'm too selfish to let you go." His hands settled on her waist. "We have that charity gala tonight, the one at the Met, full circle from where we started." "I remember." Janet dropped champagne glasses, and you decided I was worth hiring. "I decided you were worth everything." Stanley's expression turned serious. "There will be people there tonight, legitimate people, politicians, business leaders. They'll judge you for being with me. Some will be cruel about it." "I can handle it." "I know you can. But I need you to know that if it ever becomes too much, if you ever want out—" Janet silenced him with a kiss. "I'm not going anywhere, Stanley Marchetti. You're stuck with me." "Promise?" "Promise." The Metropolitan Museum looked exactly as Janet remembered it. Grand, elegant, filled with New York's elite pretending their money didn't come from morally questionable sources. But this time, Janet wasn't carrying champagne trays. This time, she walked in on Stanley's arm, wearing a custom Valentino gown that Lorraine had insisted was absolutely perfect, darling. Her new necklace catching the light, her head held high. Heads turned, whispers followed them. "That's Stanley Marchetti. The Morrison girl. I heard she's his... Working for him, or is she with him? Bold of her to show her face here." Stanley's hand tightened on her waist. "Ignore them." "I am." And she was, because Janet had learned something in the past 6 months. The opinions of people who'd never faced real hardship, who'd never made impossible choices, who'd never loved someone despite the cost, simply didn't matter. They made their way through the crowd, Stanley stopping occasionally to shake hands, exchange pleasantries, and conduct the business of maintaining his empire's legitimate face. Janet played her part perfectly, poised, charming, just mysterious enough to be intriguing. Lorraine found them by the Egyptian exhibition, resplendent in crimson silk. "You two look disgustingly happy. It's nauseating." "Jealous?" Stanley teased. "Vicarious satisfaction. Someone in this family should have a functional relationship." Lorraine air-kissed Janet's cheeks. "That necklace is stunning. He has excellent taste." "He learned from the best," Stanley replied. José appeared with Marie, both dressed formally. The entire family had come out tonight, a show of unity and strength. They'd rebuilt after the Ramos conflict, stronger than before. "Boss," José said quietly, "Antonio Calabrese just arrived. He's asking to speak with you." Stanley's expression hardened. "About?" He didn't say, but he brought his sons, all 5 of them. That was significant. The Calabrese family didn't travel en masse unless something major was happening. "Where is he?" "Renaissance Gallery, private." Stanley looked at Janet. "I need to take this meeting. Will you be all right here?" "I'll stay with her," Lorraine said immediately. Janet squeezed Stanley's hand. "Go, I'll be fine." But as Stanley disappeared into the crowd with José and Marie, Janet felt a flutter of unease. Antonio Calabrese had been civil but distant since their meeting 6 months ago. What could he want now? "Stop worrying," Lorraine commanded, handing Janet a glass of champagne. "Stanley can handle the Calabrese family. He's been doing it for years." "I know. You love him, so you worry. It's adorable and exhausting." Lorraine clinked their glasses together. "To love in impossible places." Janet drank, but her eyes kept drifting toward the Renaissance Gallery. Stanley found Antonio Calabrese standing before a painting of the Madonna and Child, his 5 sons arranged behind him like a small army. The old man looked every one of his 70-some years tonight, his face drawn with fatigue. "Antonio," Stanley extended his hand, "this is unexpected." "Stanley," his handshake was firm despite his age, "I hear you had trouble with the Ramos cartel. Messy business. It's been handled." "So I understand," decisively. Antonio's dark eyes were shrewd. "You've grown strong, Stanley, stronger than your predecessors, stronger than men twice your age. I've been fortunate. You've been smart, there's a difference." Antonio gestured for his sons to step back, giving them privacy. "I have a proposition for you." Stanley's guard went up immediately. Propositions from old guard families are rarely simple. "I'm listening." "My family controls the ports, as you know, but we're getting old. My sons are capable, but they lack vision. They think small, defend territory instead of expanding it." Antonio's expression was tired. "I won't live forever, and when I die, there will be chaos as my sons fight over succession. You want me to mediate? I want you to absorb us." The words hung in the air like a bomb. "Bring the Calabrese family under your protection. Let my sons work for you. In return, you get complete control of the ports and our political connections." Stanley kept his expression neutral, but his mind was racing. This was unprecedented. Old guard families didn't surrender territory. They fought to the death to maintain independence. "Why?" Stanley asked bluntly. "Why give up your family's legacy?" Antonio's gaze drifted back to the Madonna painting. "Because legacy means nothing if everyone's dead. I've watched this life destroy too many people. My daughter, good men who followed me. My wife died young from the stress." His voice cracked slightly. "I don't want my sons to suffer the same fate. Under your leadership, they'll be protected, guided, given a chance at something better than endless gang wars. And your enemies, the families that will see this as weakness? Let them." Antonio's smile was grim. "You're strong enough to handle them, stronger than I ever was. And that girl of yours, the Morrison girl, she reminded me that there's more to life than power and violence." Stanley's eyebrows rose. "Janet? She has honest eyes, like my Maria did." Antonio's expression softened with old grief. "When I look at her, I remember what we're supposed to be protecting. Not just territory or money, but people, families, the innocent ones who get caught in our wars."
If you enjoy watching this, please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.